Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mio on MMA podcast, giving you UFC predictions for UFC 318, which is coming to us from New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm so used to saying Las Vegas, Nevada. Like, it is just ingrained in me that anytime we go anywhere else and it's not in the name, like UFC Nashville or something, I just forget. And we're at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, which, in fairness, is actually one of the few arenas I actually remember where it is. The art of the arena name is completely lost with these corporate sponsorship things. Probably particularly bad because I live in Canada, where we have a Rogers Center in like every single major city. Anyways, that rant over, that unneeded segue over. Let's get into the disclaimer here, which is I'm going to talk about fight bets here. I'm going to talk about information you can use for betting. However, betting on MMA is not a path to financial freedom. It should not be used as such. You should not be dropping massive amounts of money on these fights. Please don't. Please don't. And if you do, and you lose that money, do not come crying to me, because I've told you not to do that. I will be putting some money down. I think it's fine. It's a nice extra spice of life, but that is all it should be. So quick overview, thoughts on this card. It is not very good, but the main event I am here for. Now, do I think this is... Now, here's the thing when I say it's not good. If I was talking to Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard, aka the UFC matchmakers right now, and Dana White, the promoter, I would not give them any credit for this card, because the fight that makes this card is Dustin Poirier's retirement fight against Max Holloway. And the only reason that's on the card is, number one, Poirier, pressed for this to be his retirement fight. Max pressed to be the opponent. And Dustin was game. So, like, the power brokers, the people who will, inevitably get the credit if this does really good numbers, are not involved. They put together the rest of this card, and in terms of compelling fights down this card that are, to be clear, not that are interesting, I'm going to say this, like, because you can have an exciting fight, like Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez, perfectly good action fight, it's going to be fun to watch, etc. However, it is not an impressive piece of matchmaking. It is not interesting analytically. It is not particularly relevant. And as such, as the third fight on a pay-per-view, it is not a good matchmaking job. It'll be fine. It'll be entertaining. It'll be good. We're good there. But in terms of like matchmaking doing its job of creating impactful, interesting, fight-asking questions with, I guess Impact would cover this, but import towards the promotion, there is Vinicius Oliveira versus Kyler Phillips on this card. And that's about it. I honestly, like, I got nothing else on here. Like, there are going to be entertaining fights here. I talked about Holland and Kopylov for a brief, Holland and Rodriguez for a brief moment. Ige versus Pitbull, that's a solid fight that I think is going to be entertaining. Johnson versus Zell Hooper, I think that's going to be an entertaining fight. I think Prado versus Veretenikov, that's going to be an interesting, a perfectly fine, exciting fight. But in terms of like the actual like quality, analytically interesting fights, there's not much here. There is not much here. But the main event is really, really awesome, and I take my money. is the unfortunate answer that I have. So let's get into the fights. Let's talk about this. We have, of course, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Oh, quick note. Best fight odds for some reason is not updating itself. So my usual like range of odds is not available. So when I talk about betting odds, it'll just be from the book that I am going to be betting on for this card. And that means that it's just going to be a single number. There's not going to be a minus 500 to minus 650 or anything like that. It's just going to be a straight up number. But it should still give us an idea of who is the favorite and who is the underdog in these fights and how confident we are on that. So Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, the trilogy fight here. Poirier has won the prior two, one that is completely useless because it was a very, very raw, very green Max Holloway, and the second one was in 2019 for the UFC interim lightweight title, which was won by Poirier. Again, he won, I would say, 3 rounds convincingly. I think a lot of judges gave him a 4th round. Watching it again over, I came up with a 48-47 scorecard myself, but I don't think that a 4-round card for Poirier is ridiculous or anything. So, watch that fight again to enjoy it. That's from 2019, and it's hard to say what's changed, because I do think that Max Holloway, over the course of his career, became far more comfortable and confident as a back foot striker, as a counter striker, and just in general sharper footwork than he was in that 2019 fight. Whereas I do think Poirier was probably the best version of himself in that fight. Poirier's career has kind of gone downhill, not because of the losses. This is kind of interesting to me, because when I watch Poirier's last 7 fights or so, it's not the losses that are the problem, because he lost to Islam Makhachev, big whoop. He lost to Charles Oliveira, big whoop. He lost to Justin Gaethje, big whoop. That one's, I guess that one's a little bit of a problem, because it's a knockout, and it's the type of fight that Poirier wants to have, and so on. It's not somebody taking him out and doing something that I don't want to say has never happened before, because he's been knocked out by Michael Johnson, he'd been knocked out by Conor McGregor previously, but that hadn't happened in a while. But those fights don't really tell much about the reduction in Poirier, the degradation of his skills and his physical abilities. It's the wins. Like, I don't think the best version of Dustin Poirier runs into any trouble with Benoit Saint-Denis or Michael Chandler, but he actually did. Like he won those fights, he got the stoppages, and he did the thing. And on paper, he's got those dubs. But realistically, there were points in both of those fights that were problematic in a way that I don't think Poirier in his prime would have had. So he is retiring. That's obviously a massive question, because we have seen retirement fights be this last gasp of like genius and brilliance. Zach Cummins maybe is the best example of this. That's a weird one. That's a weird deep like pull there. But like his fight with Ed Herman, which was also Ed Herman's retirement fight, is an example of a fighter who probably had his absolute best fight on the way out the door. And maybe that is what Poirier's got here. But we've also seen people who just, they look kind of done. They're here for that last time, that last hurrah, and it's kind of a whimper. That's happened before. So that's going to be an interesting thing to think about here. But let's get to the pick. Let's get to the thought. Holloway is more comfortable in the back foot now. He's more comfortable countering. Poirier's more hittable than he has historically been. He's a little bit slower than he has historically been. And the fight of note, the actual reference here of 2019, was a close fight. It was one that Poirier definitely won, and I think if you scored it for Holloway, you're out there. You're out there on a ledge. But it's not like at points Holloway could not solve what was going on. He just couldn't do it enough to win the fight. Couldn't hurt Poirier enough. When Poirier was hurting him, he couldn't, outside of 2 rounds, he couldn't really get a solid volume advantage. He wasn't comfortable on the back foot, and these are things that have improved, even if physically Holloway's probably a little bit past his prime right now at 33 years old. So Poirier's probably not going to be able to weaponize the wrestling to take him down and work him over, which has been a path to beating Max Holloway previously. He's not Ilia Topuria, who is a very explosive, very powerful, very top of his game fighter right now. He is not a better version of himself than the one that beat and had a very close fight with Holloway. So I think at the end of the day, I've got to go with Holloway, because there are small improvements that he has done. They are relevant to this fight, because, again, a big issue for him against Poirier was that when Poirier would go forward, would get on the front foot, would start landing hard, he didn't have an answer. I think we're finally at the point where Holloway does have some composure and answers on the back foot. And I trust him to fight at a higher pace than Poirier is currently capable at the age of 36, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 36 is capable of doing. Now, would I love to see Poirier win this fight and go off to the great retirement pitch? I'd love it. I am here for it. The crowd would be insanely here for it. And there is a possibility. Like I said, I mean, he could pull out the Zach Cummins here and be like, I have traded part of my soul for this final hurrah, and I'm gonna make it happen. And obviously, again, this is a fight he's won twice before. There is a chance that Holloway goes out there and starts to feel some of the similar things that happened in the first two fights from Poirier, and just can't get past that there's a mental block. There is an element of, I've lost this fight twice and I cannot deal with it sort of thing. Like, that's on the table. But if you took away the previous fights and you just match these two guys up, fresh matchup in there, Holloway looks like a guy who has a version of himself that wins this fight. I'm not sold that Poirier does. So Holloway by decision is the pick. It would be the bet. I have Poirier at minus 130, or Poirier at plus 110, Holloway at minus 130. So, it's a tight, decent line, which I think is bettable either way if you've got a really solid feeling on this. But I do think you have to go with Holloway here. Costa versus Kopylov. I'm not going to complicate this much. Much at all, to be honest, because when it comes down to it, here's the thing. If Paulo Costa was the guy that was making his way through the UFC middleweight division to a title shot against Israel Adesanya still, he would win this fight. Kopylov has issues on the back foot. He has sloppy footwork. He has problems with impactful wrestling and aggressive fighters. And that was Costa to a T once upon a time. But I don't trust Costa at all. His only win since then is against the absolute husk of Luke Rockhold, who was done. Unquestionably done. His cardio has been bizarrely unreliable because, he did bring the cardio against, say, Sean Strickland and sort of kept up more or less in that fight. Landed 158 strikes to 182 strikes. His third round, his fourth round, his fifth round were still pretty active. It was largely pretty similar the whole way through. In fact, his most active round was the fifth round. His cardio held up there, but at the same time, he faded badly against Robert Whittaker. He faded badly against Luke Rockhold. He faded badly against Marvin Vettori. So his cardio is, at best, unreliable and confusing in that regard. He seems like a broken fighter that I don't trust mentally. I think the physicality is still there. I don't think he's age broken or anything. He still seems powerful, strong, durable, obviously, and explosive. But there is no fight in that 1-4 run that you can watch and be like, I would reliably pick Costa to win a fight. There's no ability to impose himself and his will on a fight, except against Luke Rockhold. And again, that Luke Rockhold fight needs to be taken with every grain of salt possible, that it is a very bad version of Luke Rockhold. It is a washed version of Luke Rockhold, and it cannot be used as a predictive measure of success against anybody else. So, would I be surprised if Costa came out and won this fight? No, because he is exactly the type of fighter that historically would beat Roman Kopylov if he comes forward with authority and confidence and pressure and a mix of wrestling and power striking. It would be there. He would eat shots because he's not defensively sound, but he would win the fight. I don't know that guy exists. So I have to pick Roman Kopylov by decision. Kopylov is, like I said, well, you know what? I didn't give him his props, actually. Kopylov is a very good striker by 185 standards. He is diverse. He attacks the body. He attacks the legs. He is a good kicker. He is a good puncher. He is creative. He is adaptive. He can hit on the counter as well. He is a really, really good fighter. But it's that is how special Costa was as a physical force. That version of him would absolutely win this fight. But I don't trust that guy to exist. So Kopylov by decision because Costa is still exceptionally durable and doesn't quit in the fight. But there's just there are too many things I do not trust in any way, shape, or form about him. And Costa's a plus 250 underdog, minus 255 for Kopylov. Makes sense. I'm fine with that. you could bet on Costa if you wanted. I'll probably put a small flyer on Costa. Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. This is another fight that I'm not really going to complicate too much. Kevin Holland is the taller, the longer, the younger fighter, the better athlete, the higher ceiling fighter. And that's actually kind of why this is not very interesting, because a fight that I feel absolutely comfortable picking Kevin Holland in is analytically not an interesting fight, because there is so much wrong with Kevin Holland's game. So much failure strategically and also like technically, particularly when it comes to the wrestling and so on. So the fact that I'm just like, Daniel Rodriguez is going to go out there and he's going to box with Kevin Holland, and Kevin Holland is faster, more powerful, 2 inches taller, 7 inches longer. Like, that's just, he's kind of just going to get boxed up. It wouldn't surprise me if this ends up being like similar to the Holland fight with Joaquin Buckley back in the day, where he actually just kind of gets to style a little bit. So Holland by TKO. He's minus 450 to plus 350 and plus 350 for Rodriguez. Do I want to say that that is a little bit too wide? Not really. Like, I want to, because minus 450 on Holland is not bettable, I guess, in a nutshell. But no, that does more or less make sense. Then we get to Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. Ige is the minus 200 favorite. Pitbull's plus 170. I am maybe going with a nostalgia pick here / a feel-good pick, because when it comes down to it, if Dan Ige goes out there and beats Patricio Pitbull, it will be kind of disappointing / depressing, because that would be the end, basically. That would be the Pitbull is not going to beat anybody of significance in the UFC, and he's come to the UFC way too late at 38 years old, and it's just going to be a waste. Because this is a fight that prime Pitbull does win. Ige doesn't have much of a range game to speak of. Part of that is his own physicality doesn't really allow for it. He's 5'7", and most opponents will just diffuse him at range anyway, so he hasn't bothered developing one. But there's also like a general discomfort / not interest in that as well. Like, on top of that, it's just not something he wants to do. And as a result, the main weakness that Pitbull has, which is that you can exploit him at range, like Yair Rodriguez did, isn't really there. Ige is going to generally kind of walk into the range that Pitbull wants to fight at, which is that kind of mid-range / even close range. And Pitbull's going to be able to, throw the counter punches at him and find his range and get in there and maybe score a takedown or two. Ige is hard to take down, but like, Pitbull is a sneaky good wrestler, particularly during like combinations and so on. So I am going to go with Pitbull to win by decision here. This feels like more like a Lerone Murphy fight, and not like the standard Ige wins, which are guys like Sean Woodson, Andre Feely, Nate Landwehr, Damon Jackson. I don't know. I how much of like Pitbull and Feely is not? No, they're just not the same. They're just not the same. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Pitbull by decision to land the better strikes. Probably not more strikes, but land the better strikes. Be a relatively close fight. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's gonna blow Ige out of the water or anything. But I really hope that this is the one here, because, well, let's just say like that fight with Yair Rodriguez was disheartening, because Yair Rodriguez was a bad matchup for Pitbull, even in his prime. A guy who is taller, has longer range than him, can diffuse just through physicality his counter game. And it was really painful watching or listening to Joe Rogan, predominantly Rogan, but also the commentary in general, just kind of try to make it into something it wasn't. Where they're like, well, there are levels to this, and like this is exposing Pitbull and Bellator in general, and it's like, no, it's not. This is just a bad matchup for an old man, and Ige is a much, much, much more winnable fight for him. And if he doesn't, then, well, that's not good, because it's going to get really, really hard to pick him in his third fight. We'll put it that way. And also, I'm kind of hoping to profit off of guys who haven't really experienced Pitbull in his prime, didn't watch him in Bellator, don't understand what he's got, and they're just kind of going off that really, really bad fight with Yair Rodriguez and going like, well, Dan Ige will sure as heck win this, because Ige at minus 200 seems like a really, really wide line, and plus 170 on Pitbull. So I know where my big underdog pick is going to go. Michael Johnson versus Daniel Zellhuber, the opener for the main card, if I'm not tremendously mistaken here. Let me just verify that by pulling up the actual card here as opposed to my notes. Yeah, main card opener here. Michael Johnson versus Daniel Zellhuber. Again, not a lot to say. Not a particularly interesting bout. I don't hate it because Zellhuber is still pretty untested, but at the end of the day, he is taller, longer than Michael Johnson, which is something Johnson doesn't handle particularly well. A lot of Johnson's skill is being the guy who can win the range fight and be bigger. He's recently got a nice win streak going, but like it's Atman Azaitar, who sucks. It's Darius Flowers, who is a mess and sucks. It is Mark D. Casey, who always had a lot of potential, but like never really put together a game. Like we were constantly waiting for him to figure things out. Alan Patrick, who is incredibly uncomfortable as a striker. So could Johnson put on a wrestling game on him? Maybe. Could he hurt Zellhuber because he is probably the fastest hand Zellhuber's ever fought, but like it's just a bad stylistic matchup for him. Like Zellhuber should be able to hit him from further away. He should be able to work at a faster pace than Johnson just because of the age. And he himself is a pretty damn good athlete. So I'm going with Zellhuber by decision. Stoppages on the table. Johnson is finishable, he is hurtable, but Johnson's finishes don't really look like what Zellhuber tends to do. So I'm going to say it goes the distance, but crossing figures for like just a good fight, and obviously for Zellhuber to win. Kyler Phillips versus Vinicius Oliveira. Now, before I give my pick on this one, I want to be clear that I think part of the betting odds are actually influencing this pick, because I am legitimately wondering if I opened up this fight on Tapology and saw the plus minus that they give based on their picks and saw that Oliveira was like the big underdog against Phillips, if I would pick Oliveira. But because Phillips is the underdog, maybe I'm shading that way. And I'm going to take Oliveira, or I'm going to take Phillips at plus 145 and skew Oliveira at minus 170. This is actually probably one of the more interesting fights on the card, because Phillips is the guy that coming up, I thought might be something special, because he does have dynamic athleticism. He has a well-rounded game. He has an ability to game plan to a certain degree. He adapts to a fight somewhat well. Like he has all the ingredients of like a very, very, very good featherweight. Pardon me, bantamweight. But it hasn't really come together. Like, if you look at his record, it's a loss to old man Rob Font. It's a loss to Raulian Paiva. It's a loss to Victor Henry. These are all fights that he probably should have won if he was coming through to his, like, deal. And then, like, his best win is Yadong. a very raw... No, not a very raw, but a rawer version of Yadong Song and like Pedro Munoz and Ronnie Barcelos. And the problem is a little bit of the Morgan Charrier issue, where he doesn't seem to have that ability to comprehend that when he does something really impactful and really cool, that it doesn't terminate a sequence if the opponent is going to keep coming. And Vinicius Oliveira is kind of the opposite, where like there's not a clean game there, but my God, is the guy aggressive and scrappy. Like he is a dog, and it can be striking, it can be wrestling. It is a constant source of aggression and going back for more and working really, really hard. And it's why he was able to beat a fighter that, on paper, on a technical level, like Said Nurmagomedov, is better than him. But he got that job done. He got the job done against Ricky Simone. He got the fight with Bernardo Sapai, which is pretty good. And I have to go with Phillips. It's just kind of like, I don't know, like Phillips is with MMA Lab. There are moments where he seems to be figuring this out. And I'm just kind of waiting for him to snap it in there. To apply the fact that he is really fast, really athletic, really nice in terms of technical form. And that, like, at some point, there should be something there. But he's also in his 30s. So, I don't know. I don't know. Am I just going with an underdog pick because I like the guy? I don't know. Going with Phillips by decision. Oliveira is super durable, super gritty. So Phillips plus 145 is my bet, minus 170 on Oliveira. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. This fight was booked, I think, a couple of times previously. So the fact that it's happening now when I have zero faith in Marvin Vettori to work at the pace that he needs to be aggressive in the way that he needs to be, and to be fearless in the way that he needs to be to actually win the fight is sad. So I'm going with Brendan Allen. It's not because I think Brendan Allen is a super good fighter or anything, but he fights at a high pace. Vettori does not hurt people, like, ever. And Vittori's last couple of fights against Jared Cannonier, and then particularly the Roman Dolidze fight, I don't think he knows how to win anymore. And you would have to find the most either unstructured or unathletic middleweight for me to make a pick of Vettori. And I don't have much else to say about that, so let's just move on. Vettori is a plus 180 favorite. Allen is minus 210. Francisco Prado versus Nikolai Veretennikov. Prado is minus 150, plus 130 on Veretennikov. I will say this, Prado at 170 is a bad thing. He's 5'10". He is 69.5-inch reach. This will not do. This will not do it. He's not that big. He should be a 155er, and if he's having a hard time with that, he needs to restructure his dieting and weight cutting program, nutrition, and so on, because I don't think this is a long-term good idea. That being said, you would think that I'm picking Veretennikov. I'm not. Veretennikov he's got a decently big frame, but he's not a terrible athlete, but there's nothing there. His regional game was, I am a good athlete, not a phenomenal athlete, but a good athlete, and I'm big, and that will be enough for me to win. And it was against guys like DeMarcus Jackson, who is just an athletic test. But Prado is the more active fighter, the aggressive fighter. I don't think either of these guys are going to wrestle, so we're looking at very much a standard kickboxing fight. And at the end of the day, I expect Prado to basically just land more. Like, that's honestly it. So, Prado, go down to 155. If you're going to fight in the UFC, that is actually where you're going to have to be. But Veretennikov is just bad. So, there you go. Tipa Gauthier, pardon me, versus Robert Valentine at 185. I will say Gauthier should not be a minus 550 favorite, and Valentine should not be a plus 400 underdog, but I'm going to go with Gauthier here. The reason is simple. Gauthier has an incredibly high ceiling. He's got the athletic ability. He is huge for the weight class. He is physically everything you could want. He's fast. He's powerful. He's adept. There are signs that he has some, like, pretty actually decent technical skills, but he is very unproven, and beating Medina in his UFC debut does not do anything, because Medina is just tough, and that's all he's got going for him. So Valentine is the best fighter he's ever fought. There wouldn't be much of a surprise if Valentine's aggression, his own power, the messy striking game that he has, but like one that is applied with size and some power and some aggression and some good grappling backing it, is enough to actually get the win here. I don't know. It's kind of like the Talish and Teixeira fight from last week, where with Gauthier playing that role of, there's something here and there's definitely a lot that can be done with it, but I don't know. I don't really trust the people coaching him. I don't really trust the regional scene he came from. And as a result, there's just, there's going to be question marks, but like, he should knock out Robert Valentine. So I'm going with Gauthier. Adam Fugit versus Islam Dulatov. Fugit is, I'm going to say this is also like another case where like it's a little bit too wide, plus 410. on Fugit to minus 560 on Dulatov. Dulatov does look like an actually pretty good fighter off of Dana White Contender Series. He's got a pretty well-structured boxing and striking game. He can wrestle. He can grapple quite a bit. He's well-rounded. He's big, 6'3", 75 inches at 170, and seems to be a pretty good athlete. Like, there's definitely power there. There's speed. There's explosiveness. There's dynamicism. I'm looking forward to what he can do. I don't know. There's just no one really on his record that dedicates to being this big of a favorite. But yeah, I am picking him here to TKO Fugit. Fugit is not a bad veteran. He's a bit not textbook. He's a bit janky, and that can be sort of a good test for some fighters. It's kind of why I picked him against, am I thinking of the right guy here? Japanese prospect. Should have written his name down. Yusako Kinoshita was a good example of this, and even Josh Quinlan to a certain degree, where his ability to just kind of be janky, aggressive, and keep coming forward was enough to get it done. But he's also lost to Michael Morales and Mike Malott pretty convincingly. So he's probably not going to be able to wrestle Dulatov. He's not going to be able to strike with him, I don't think. And Dulatov is that kind of killer. So unless there's just a weakness in Dulatov where he hits Fugit with some hard shots and Fugit comes back at him, because he will, and that breaks Dulatov, there isn't really a reason to pick Fugit here. Jimmy Crute versus Marcin Prachnio. I am going with Crute by TKO because it's the more entertaining version of this fight. The version of this fight that Marcin Prachnio wins is just a range kickboxing match where he can land kicks to the body and to the legs and so on. And there is a chance that he could do that to Crute because Crute's range striking game is non-existent. But anyone who's really tried to take down Prachnio has more or less succeeded in doing it, including guys who are not known for their takedown game really at all. We're talking about Modestas Bukauskas. We're talking about Felipe Lins. So there's not really any reason to believe that he can keep Crute at bay and stay at a comfortable range. Crute will at some point find the inside on him because he's very, very aggressive. As much as Crute's game should not actually be terribly successful at a UFC level, he does know what his winning conditions are. He's kind of the opposite of Marvin Vettori now, where Vettori's game probably still works, but his brain doesn't want to implement it. Crute will walk into the fire, try to find the clinch, try to find his takedowns, and Prachnio can be pounded out. Prachnio's pretty good about not getting subbed. In fact, I don't know, has he ever been subbed? I think of Crute as more of a sub guy, even if it's a brute force kind of thing. But okay, Vitor Petrino got him, but that's it. One submission loss since 2013. Yeah, I'll say Crute gets him down and pounds him out at some point because Prachnio's not super durable, at least when he's on the ground. So there you go. It is a weird fight in the sense that Crute is 8 years younger than Prachnio, but he's actually the one that I worry about more because he's retired, or at least talked about retirement on 2 separate occasions and then come back. So there is a big question mark there that this guy doesn't really want to do this anymore. It's also been since 2020 since he actually won a fight. It's very weird. He's 0-3-2 in his last 5. But the losses are to Menefield, Jamal Hill, and Anthony Smith, who are all, pretty good fighters. And then draws with Menefield and Rodolfo Bellato, who are really, really physical guys that Prachnio's not. So I don't know. I guess you could argue that the Smith loss would be kind of like it, but Smith, if you recall, beat him by basically just turning his leg off with a low kick, the whole nerve shut down and flopping around, and it looks really, really, really gross to watch it. But yeah, I have to say Crute, but I would not bet on Crute at minus 240. Prachnio at plus 205. Would I touch that? No, I don't think I would. I'd probably just stay away from it. Crute by TKO is the pick. Ryan Spawn versus Lucas Brzeski. Ryan Spawn's move to heavyweight is a terrible idea because he's just fat. But Lucas Bresky is not somebody I'm going to pick against or pick for at the UFC level. He is just not very athletic, and his durability, I think, is also gone. He's getting knocked out a lot in his recent fights. The floodgates are kind of open. He got knocked out by Kenny Nzechukwu in the first round. Mick Parkin, who's not known as a hard hitter. Waldo Cortez Acosta, who I guess is kind of a hard hitter, but like also went to decision with Sergey Spivak, went to decision with Robelis Despain, went to decision with Andrei Arlovsky. So like it's one of his two UFC finishes. The only other person is Ryan Spawn, ironically. So battle of the two guys that Waldo Cortez Acosta has actually finished. Yeah, it's not the type of fight that I would expect Spawn to lose. I mean, I guess there's some similarities with the Anthony Smith fight, but not really. Spawn is a fast, hard-hitting, explosive guy. I just question, like, if he actually listened to his coaches, took this seriously, and, like, by his own admission, just, like, trained, he would be so much better. But I gotta go with Spawn by TKO. Everybody's knocking out Lucas Bresky at this point. There's not really a way of Bresky of winning. Like, he's the better long-term technical striker, but like he's not an amazing technical striker, and he's not a good athlete. He's slow. I don't know. I don't like if Bresky wins, it's Spawn beating himself. And as much as I could absolutely see that, I don't want to pick it. So Spawn's a minus 220 favorite, plus 180 on Bresky. Bruno Ferreira versus Jackson McVeigh. I'm picking Bruno Ferreira here. Jackson McVeigh is a clinch grappler all the way. He is a guy who really without the clinch does not really seem to have a game. He has to find the clinch to start landing knees, to land elbows. He's very, very vicious in the clinch, but Bruno Ferreira is a guy who has a judo background. He hits really, really hard, and he's really, really strong and well structured to just kind of be like, oh, you want to clinch with me? That's cool. I'll throw you off me and hit you really, really, really hard in the process. So Ferreira by TKO. This might actually be the first time I'm picking Ferreira to win a fight. One sec here. I am having a look here. Did I think I'm entirely certain I picked Petrosya to beat him. I might have picked. No, okay. You know what? He fought Dustin Stolfus. I would have picked him. I don't remember if I picked him against Dustin Stolfus, but I would definitely have picked him against Dustin Stolfus. And I picked him against Sultan Ruziboev, who ended up knocking him out in 1 minute and 17 seconds. So I guess beware of that. I haven't had a great read on his fights, but he's also a minus 750 favorite. So what are you betting on him if you are betting on him? And Jackson McVeigh is plus 525. Carly Judiz versus Nicole Cagliari will be the opener of this fight card. I'm actually looking forward to this fight, but it's not like a terribly interesting analytical fight or one that I need to break down in like great detail. It is Carly Judiz is a pretty good athlete who fights at a really high pace, seems to really enjoy the firefight, the aggression, and so on. Will mix in takedowns with her strikes, but predominantly is a striker, and has done really quite well for somebody who is as raw as she is, because she came onto the Contender Series being very, very raw against Ernesta Caracate, who is a pretty... Caracate? I always forget how to pronounce her name. I apologize. Ernesta. Went to split decision with her in a fight that they landed an insane number of strikes against. Fought Gabriel Fernandez, lost that one by split, and then recently knocked out Eunice Duden. And that's like, oh, she went 1-2. What do you mean it's been very impressive? The fact that she went to split decisions against Ernesta and against Gabriel Fernandez, who are like legitimately like pretty good prospects in this division, on a very, very raw ability, is very impressive. And she's got a good frame. She's 5'7" for the weight class. Cagliari is also not a bad fighter. She's 5'3", but it's 5'3", 62-inch reach. She feels a little bit too small. I don't know if she could make 115, but like it feels like her height and her reach kind of like lead that to be. Let me pull up this real quick because I'm not gonna say a ton more about this fight. Could she make 115? Has she made 115 before? Looking. Okay, I see a 115 fight back in 2021 against Midland Fernandez. But that scene... Oh, and here's another one against in LFA back in 2017. So she's made it before. I'd be interested to see her do it again because she's quite short and does not have a great reach for this division. She is also pretty high output. She is also a fairly decent athlete, reasonably powerful, reasonably fast. Has more of, I think, a grappling game than Judice has, obviously. Like, there's, at the very least, on paper she does. But, I don't know. I guess she did take down Ernesta 3 times. Maybe she can ground Judice. Maybe. I don't know. The only takedowns Judice has given up, though, are like actually well set up. So I'm going to say Carly Judice keeps it standing, works at a higher pace, and picks up the W here. I think that fundamentally the issue for Cagliari might be that she's in a bit of a dead zone. If like 115 is not really an option for her, being 5'3" with a 6'2" reach, and not being an overwhelming like clinch grappler, like maybe an Aaron Blanchfield at 125, I don't see that being a winning factor. But like, it should be a pretty entertaining fight. Fun times. Judice is going to go out there and she is going to throw. She's going to throw a lot. And we're probably going to probably going to see her top 150 significant strikes again, which is insane. It's an insane pace. So Carly Judice is the pick. She is the favorite at minus 285, plus 245 on Cagliari. You can put money on Cagliari. I mean, like for all the nice things I'm saying about Judice, she still is very green. She still is somebody who, until fairly recently, was not doing combat sports. She comes from a softball background, but and really started fighting 2021, so it's been about 4 years. So there's a little bit of nerves there, but like losing to Ernesta and to Gabriela Fernandez are like respectively one of the better technical strikers in this division and one of the more physical strikers in this division. So I do have to go with her. I'm not. Well, I shouldn't say that I don't know what Cagliari winning looks like. It's probably like catching a hot submission or something, but. Yeah. Anyways, I said that was going to be a really simple fight, and then I think I stretched it out a while. Check down below for links to video gaming stuff, other MMA stuff. The Discord MMA simulator is there as well. And also that's where I post a lot of my thoughts and so on. There's some other cool people there as well. And you guys have a great day. Enjoy the fights. And I will be back with my thoughts after that happens.